Here is every Saw twist ending ranked. This is Nerdist Now. If you were a horror fan in the 2000s, chances are you were caught up in the craze that was the Saw franchise. This modest, low-budget indie horror film created by two then-unknown Australian filmmakers evolved into a massive hit that defined an entire era for the horror genre. From 2004 to 2010, Saw dominated the Halloween box office, producing a sequel every single year. The series concluded its original run in 2010 with the seventh film, Saw 3D, or Saw the Final Chapter, before returning in 2017 with a sequel/soft reboot titled Jigsaw. Now, like a slasher movie killer rising from their grave, Saw is back once more with Spiral from the Book of Saw. In preparation, I decided to take a look back at the franchise leading up to the new film's release. I was quickly reminded of all the hallmarks that made the Saw movies such massive fan favorites: creepy atmosphere, brutal traps, and of course, the big twist endings. Every fan remembers looking forward to that moment in each film's climax when the iconic Hello Zepp score kicked in and you knew was about to get real. So, in honor of the return of the Saw franchise, we're looking back at each of those twists and ranking them to find out just which one was truly the most mind-blowing. Now, before we get started, we will obviously be getting into some major spoilers today for, well, every movie in the Saw franchise, including Spiral. So if you want to avoid that sort of thing, I suggest you saw off your own foot and skedaddle on out of here. Go on. I'll wait. Number 9. Saw 5. Let's start off with probably my least favorite film in the series, Saw 5, which centers around two main plots: a group of 5 people caught up in one of Jigsaw's games, and a game of cat and mouse between Detective Hoffman and Agent Strom. The film culminates with a fairly underwhelming twist in both scenarios. The revelation about the group playing the game was interesting, but not exactly groundbreaking. Instead of fighting against each other to survive, as it would seem was intended, the traps were actually designed for the group to work together for their survival, giving new context to Jigsaw's words at the beginning of the movie, imploring them to go against their instincts. As a result, the final trap, which required them to fill up a container with blood, would have been easily beaten with 5 people, but is instead a harrowing ordeal for the 2 remaining, seemingly killing one and leaving the other in critical condition. Meanwhile, the final confrontation between Hoffman and Strom is visually satisfying, but narratively did little for me. Effectively, Hoffman succeeds in outsmarting Strom, who is then crushed to death, while we learn that Hoffman set him up to take the fall as the other Jigsaw apprentice the police are looking for. Maybe it's because the next movie immediately undercuts this subplot, but this twist left the smallest impact on me and therefore claims the bottom spot on this list. Number 8. Saw 6. An all-around better movie and one of my personal favorites, but sadly, it has a pretty underwhelming twist as well. I do like the reveal that the mother and son characters, who we are led to believe are related to the main test subject, William, are in fact victims of his wrongdoing. However, the idea that the entire film was then sort of effectively rendered pointless, and ultimately came down to this grieving family's choice about whether he lived or died, felt a bit counterintuitive to the core of what John was all about. Furthermore, the twist that Hoffman was the 6th target left in John's will to his wife Jill was pretty obvious, if not expected, considering the previous 2 movies established that Hoffman was long overdue for a test of his own. That said, I like the final moment with the reverse bear trap. It wonderfully subverts expectations, with Hoffman managing to survive at the last second, and was a great way to close things out and lead into Saw the Final Chapter. Number 7. Saw 4. So, as you might have noticed, I'm not a huge fan of the Hoffman-centric twists. However, Saw 4 is probably my favorite of the Hoffman movies, and its twist is the one that cemented him as the series' heir to the Jigsaw legacy. Following Saw 3's messy finale, it was uncertain where the series would go. The 4th installment not only gave closure to Detective Matthews and his partner Daniel Rigg, but it also offered significant insight into John's origin. While Hoffman's identity isn't exactly shocking, I remember being suspicious of that smug, punchable face when he was first introduced in Saw 3, it was an impactful moment for the series and provided ample material for him as the new series antagonist for the remainder of the original run. Number 6. Jigsaw. Moving on, we have Jigsaw, the first sequel in 7 years after Saw 3D wiped out pretty much every major character in the franchise. I'm pretty middle of the road on this movie in general, but I did like the twist for what it was, at least on paper. The revelation that the scenes with the group in the barn were actually in the past as part of Jigsaw's first major game was an interesting approach to connect the movie to its predecessors. However, the reveal of yet another Jigsaw apprentice felt a little forced. especially given that he'd supposedly been around since the beginning, and yet was never even alluded to or hinted at in any of the previous 7 films. Also, in hindsight, the idea that these traps were made earlier in John's career feels kinda off when you look at them compared to the traps we saw in the earlier films around that same point in the timeline. I don't know, there's just something about the idea that he made a massive, complex people blender that makes me laugh when you look at it next to the rusty gadgets he used in the first movies. Number 5. Spiral from the Book of Saw. While we're on the subject of reboots, let's talk about the Saw franchise's latest entry, Spiral from the Book of Saw. Now, if you haven't seen the movie yet and don't want to have it spoiled for you, feel free to skip ahead to the next entry on this list. So, Spiral doesn't really rely as heavily on the idea of the twist in the same way that the rest of the series does. The reveal that Chris Rock's rookie partner William is the one behind everything isn't even the movie's real twist. As we've established, the famous Hello Zep score is synonymous with the Saw movie's twist ending, and it is noticeably absent through most of this scene. It really only plays in the film's final moments when Chris Rock's dad, played by Samuel L. Jackson, realizes the true nature of his own trap. He is ultimately a human puppet designed to be shot by the police arriving on the scene, as his son watches on in helpless horror and William makes his escape. The scene really brings things to a satisfying conclusion. It tied into the main themes of this entry while also leaving the movie's hero in a state of uncertainty about how he will walk away from this ordeal. I'm also honestly glad the film didn't get caught up in making the killer directly connected to John Kramer in the same way that Jigsaw did. I truly hope we see a continuation of the storyline in future sequels, as this twist did exactly what the best entries on this series did before it. Left me wanting more. Number 4. Saw 2. The first sequel in the series is much grander in scale than its predecessor. The story centers around a group of criminals, including Amanda from the previous movie, trapped within a tricked-out Jigsaw house of horrors. They have each been drugged with a slow-acting poison and have to search for antidotes hidden throughout the house before their time runs out. Meanwhile, a cop named Eric Matthews, good-looking detective. No, not that one, is hot on Jigsaw's trail. When they finally track Jigsaw down, Matthews learns that his son Daniel is also in the house and begins his own game with Jigsaw. The ending to this movie has so much going on, and I remember just having my mind blown at every turn in the film's climax. From Amanda and Daniel winding up back in the bathroom from the first movie, to the police arriving at the wrong house only to discover an elaborate DVD setup, revealing that the whole thing was pre-recorded, to the timer running out and the safe in Jigsaw's lair opening to find Daniel safe and secure as promised. It was twist after shocking twist. However, the ultimate reveal is that Amanda was in fact in on it the whole time, working as John's apprentice. Unlike Hoffman, this was a legitimately unexpected turn for the series. It expanded the scope of Saw's world, and as Amanda locks Detective Matthews in the dark bathroom, echoing the ending of the first film, all you can do as an audience member is sit there in stunned silence. Number 3. Saw 3D. Okay, so before we get started here, I want to clarify that this is solely a ranking based off of twists and not the movies themselves. Because believe me, I hate Saw 3D. And frankly, the twist is about the only redeeming aspect of this closing chapter. Really, I wouldn't say this twist was so much shocking as it was just purely satisfying for long-term fans of the series. From the very beginning, the fate of Dr. Gordon was one of the most hotly contested topics in the Saw fandom. Countless message boards and post-screening conversations with friends would inevitably lead to the debate over whether the iconic character could have survived his brutal amputation. Thankfully, Saw 3D finally answered the question once and for all, confirming the long-standing fan theory that not only did Dr. Gordon survive, but that he himself had become a disciple of John Kramer, and aided in the medical components of traps we've saw throughout the series. While I would have liked a more conclusive death for Hoffman, it was still beyond satisfying to hear Gordon utter the iconic game over closing lines while shutting the door on Hoffman in the bathroom where it all began. It may have been pure fan service, but honestly, who cares? It was a great payoff that brought the series full circle for its seemingly final entry. Number 2. Saw 3. By the time Saw 3 came out, the franchise was already an undeniable fixture of the horror genre, which is why I think this one is the most shocking ending of all the films. The reveal that the two main test subjects seen throughout the movie were actually husband and wife was shocking, but not necessarily earth-shattering. However, what came as a result of it very much was. Not only do we realize that the whole movie was really a test for Amanda, which she failed, but the chain reaction of consequences from that failure drastically changed the course of the series. The fallout saw both Amanda and John killed at Jeff's hands, and effectively everything that the series had led you to believe it was building towards was thrown out the window. It was a bold, daring move, and easily one of the most iconic moments that makes the Saw franchise unforgettable. Number 1, Saw. Was there ever any doubt this was going to be at the top of the list? After nearly 20 years and 9 movies, it may be easy to forget the series' humble beginnings. While the later films may have gone bigger and bloodier, the original Saw made a lasting impact with clever writing, stellar performances, and an ending that left audiences stunned. The setup is perfect. After reaching a point of pure desperation to save his family, Dr. Gordon decides to do the unthinkable and saw off his own foot in order to escape his shackle. He shoots Adam in an attempt to win Jigsaw's game, and that's when Zepp arrives. As Zepp is about to shoot Dr. Gordon, Adam bursts back to life and viciously attacks Zepp, killing him. By all appearances, at this point in the movie, the audience was meant to believe that Zepp was behind everything. However, as Gordon crawls away in search of help, Adam searches Zepp's body in hopes of finding a key, only to discover another tape recorder. The audience's expectations are beautifully undercut as they and Adam learn with horror that Zepp was merely another pawn in Jigsaw's game. And that's when the seemingly dead body that had been lying in the middle of the room the entire movie gets to its feet. Jigsaw's true identity is revealed: Dr. Gordon's patient, John Kramer. He ends the movie with a slam of the door and the immortal words, "Game over." It was an absolutely mind-blowing twist that set the golden standard for which the rest of the series would try to match. Saw fans have been trying to chase that high ever since, and that is why it sits at number 1 as the all-time greatest ending in the Saw series. And there you have it, folks. The definitive ranking of every Saw movie twist. If you found yourself watching this video and thinking about how your list would be completely different, well, you're absolutely wrong, and it is 100% personal. You can submit all formal complaints to Dan Casey. In the meantime, tell us, which twist shocked you the most? What Saw movie is your favorite? What did you think of Spiral? Let us know in the comments below, and for the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, stay tuned to Nerdist.com.